Welcome to the Mental Health Multiverse.
We're your hosts,
HB
and LB.
We'll be breaking down some of our favorite movies and TV shows as they relate to mental health, self-healing, and overall wellness, while also breaking stigmas, shedding light on misinterpretations, and helping you understand yourself a little better.
If you're also on a healing journey and enjoy pop culture, stick around.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mental Health Multiverse. I'm HB here with my co-host LB, and our episode today looks a little bit different because we are discussing quote-unquote other self-reflective animation, which is basically a bunch of other Disney Pixar movies that we did not have time to dive deeper into full episodes of this season. So that's what we're talking about today.
Woo, woo, woo. I'm excited. I think we have some pretty good classics on the list. But before we jump into that, just a little note on like the lessons or takeaways that we've taken away from the Pixar movies we've watched this season. And if you don't remember all of the ones we've already covered, feel free to go back and look at our episode list. But I think overall, there's a really big theme of friendship and community in almost every movie. And also something I personally really love about the movies, and I'm sure HB feel similarly, is that the endings aren't always what we expect, which we'll get into specifically with like Ratatouille and Monsters Inc. and things like that. But it's still like a quote unquote happy ending or a good ending. It's just not exactly what we might expect, as far as, you know, the main characters have a certain goal and they're working really hard to get it, but it's not exactly what they imagined or pictured. And I think that's just very relatable to real life versus last season. We talked a lot about like fairy tales and Disney princesses, and that one's pretty very straightforward and a little maybe possibly predictable. So it was kind of nice to visit these movies and these lessons, especially in the period of life I'm in right now. So, and then on the same vein, just the adaptability and flexibility that most of the characters have as they're navigating the different obstacles and challenges and things like that may come up. Also, just the theme of like thinking outside the box. We talked a lot about this with Judy Hopps in Zootopia and finding Dory, right? Like finding a different way to look at things or problem solve, brainstorm, which I think as recovering perfectionists can be challenging, but a really important lesson for us to learn. And then the big one that just gets me every single time is just trying, failing, and trying again, which resonates very deeply with where I am in life right now. And I think we've said this in another episode, but and I know we've said it in like the roundtables from last season, but it is really cool finding different lessons that I may or may not have noticed the first couple of times watching it, like the different things we take away as we're watching these movies for the purposes of this podcast and how relevant they are to my period of life. I really enjoyed talking about the movies that we have and the ones that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and I agree with you on the like different lenses of watching these movies. Is, you know, a lot of these movies we saw when we were a lot younger and maybe even not that much younger, you know, but you revisit them and look at them through a different lens and you can take something different away from it every time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But today we have a pretty long list of movies we're going to get through. So we'll try to be quick and I will name all of the movies we're going to talk about today. But we're going to talk about the Cars movies. We'll talk about Strange World, which I have been calling Strange Planet since we started talking about this podcast.
Yes, fine.
I don't know where I got that. Why? Monsters Inc. and Monsters University, WALL-E, A Bug's Life, Onward. And is that all?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Wonderful. I was like ready to keep going. Okay, that's not too many. We could do this.
Yeah, we can do it, especially since some of these are like franchises and they're all related. So this will be
a lot of these movies have a lot of similar themes.
For sure. Yeah. friendship just being the overarching thing, I think, in all these movies: friendship, belonging, acceptance, community,
Teamwork.
receiving
Yeah.
teamwork, yeah, receiving help, giving help, asking for help, or like giving without expecting anything back, just
Trust. Yeah.
exactly. But
So much.
without spoiling all the themes for our different movies, I guess we'll just hop into it. So let's start with Cars. Whoop whoop whoop. I actually
Yeah.
just finished watching Cars 3 like half an hour ago, and I don't know why. I've seen it before, but I was like weeping. Like I was I was sobbing. And I think it's because one, I'm like feeling very emotional lately, and I think uh spoilers for people who haven't seen it, and I know I'm going out of order, but in Cars 3, Doc Hudson is no longer with us, and
Mm.
Lightning McQueen is going through a period of his life where his identity is being shaken and his mentor is no longer with him. And I think I'm just relating it a little too much to my grandfather, where not that he and I ever really talked about like my identity. We weren't ever very close on like that emotional level, but there is a part where Lightning meets Doc's old mentors, and he thinks, or he's saying something along the lines of like, if I'm not a racer, then who am I? Like, look what happened to Doc when he wrecked and he was no longer a racer. It changed him. And those were the happiest years of his life. And Doc's mentor, Smokey, was like, you really think those were the happiest years of his life? Coaching you were the happiest years of his life. And it just made me weep, because my grandmother told me that my grandfather's happiest years of his life were when he got to take care of me and basically raise me. I was like, fuck, man. God, Pixar just always getting in my feels. And the last episode we recorded was Up. So of course I'm sobbing through Up, and I'm gonna try not to cry through this one. But let's jump backward a little bit. So Cars number 1 came out in 2006, and it follows a selfish and arrogant young racer named Lightning McQueen, who, on the way to the most important race of his life, becomes stranded in a forgotten town along Route 66 called Radiator Springs, where he learns about friendship and begins to reevaluate his priorities. And thank you, Wikipedia, for providing these synopses.
Yes.
I
Yes.
The first thing I will say about this is rewatching it after so many years of not, and also now having been to Cars Land, it's so incredible. It's so amazing. Like the animation and being able to like put myself in Radiator Springs, it makes my
Yeah.
inner child so happy.
Yeah, I went to Radiator Springs like in Disneyland when I went there a few years ago, and I remember feeling like this is freaking cool. It's just so cool. And I have not rewatched the movie since I've been there. I did not rewatch Cars for the purpose of this episode. I wish I had had time to, because I know that it's a really special movie. It's definitely one that we had on DVD and watched a bunch. I'm sure like Hallie little HB resonates with it. Not resonates with it, but like it might mean more to her because she was a
Mm.
little younger when it came out. She's the same age as you, so you know that. Like I was like 16, so I was kind of like too cool, but also it still gave me feels, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I still really liked it. And I worked at the movie theater when it came out. So, I had excuses to like see it and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but I really love the themes of this movie in terms of I think this can be applied to so much, but like the fact that there are no shortcuts in life, like the way that Lightning McQueen tries to win the race in I think it's the very first race that he does, where like
Yes.
his
Yeah.
tires all pop and he refuses to stop, and he completely literally burns out before he can
Yes.
like cross the finish line, and
It cost him
somehow
the
by
race.
some
He was gonna win. He
yeah
could have won.
yeah
And he was also like arrogant, as the synopsis said. Like in the first race, they mention kind of how he fired 3 crew chiefs, and then the press afterwards, his crew was like fixing his tires and stuff. And he's like, yeah, I'm a one-man show. And I had,
Blech.
I did it for the drama. And his team is like, okay, bye. And they quit on him. And it's funny though that you mentioned that, because in the third movie, he's kind of doing the same thing where he's trying to shortcut his training. Basically, in the third movie, he's reckoning with the fact that like he is now considered the older generation. Like many, many, many years have passed, and the newer generation is just faster, sleeker. They have different technology. And so he's trying to shortcut his way through his training so that he can get on like the high-tech simulator because he thinks that's going to solve all of his problems and blah, 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 blah. And I think Cruz Ramirez, who I know I texted you this, but she really reminds me of you. Like I didn't forget about her as a character, but I haven't watched it since you and I have become friends. And I was just sitting there like, this is Heather. Like the way that she motivates people, because she's the trainer. And so the way she's like motivating the cars and they're on the treadmills, and the way that she helps the cars like relax, or she's like, okay, the bugs are coming now, and she splatters bugs in their face. Like, I don't know. And then the things that she's saying to McQueen about like, you're old and decrepit, and you know, we gotta get oil in places they've never been before. I don't know. It just like was very Heather coded. So I thought that was really cute.
I love that. I need to revisit the third movie for sure. The third movie is sour for me. Not soured, but I saw it with a person who is many exes ago of mine.
Mm.
And it, I didn't realize this until we were to be watching Cars for the purposes of the podcast. But I was like, dang, I haven't engaged with Cars, and I think it's subconsciously because of that person. Who
That's
knows?
fair.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It reminds me of him, and he was not great to me. So
No. Yeah.
he was not.
Well, screw
He
you,
was.
guy. Screw you for ruining Cars for HB.
I know, right? Cars 3, we saw it together in theaters, and he was having a blast. We also saw the Lego Batman movie together in theaters. So those are two like animated movies I saw with this man that like are now like I associate with him. So
Dang.
I need newer, better memories, which now I can create with you,
Yeah.
because I forgot that Cruz Ramirez was a character, and now I have someone to pull from to motivate. Maybe I could do a Cars Geeknasium workout and motivate people by throwing bugs on them. Who
That
knows?
would be so fun. I really do think there's a lot you could pull from her. The way that she trains people and the way that she herself gets trained, I think you could totally pull a workout out of that. That'd be really fun. That'd be really cute.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, to go back to the first movie though, I'll just list a couple of the things that I took away from it.
Mm-hmm.
It just like in general, I think it's like fame isn't everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I may have gotten this next bullet point from the recap video I watched. So, but winning isn't about a title, it's about integrity, respect, and friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And you will be valued for how you show up in the world versus like being the number one top racer or person or whatever, which we kind of talked about. We touched on this in the Up movie as well, as like,
Yeah.
and being in service to people, like the way that Lightning McQueen saved King was
Yeah.
the King in
Mr. the
the
King.
Mr. like Mr. the King.
Yeah.
And he did that out of the goodness of his heart because the people of Radiator Springs had helped him have a change of heart.
Yeah.
And people, and when I say people, I mean like the masses. They're not human beings, they're cars, but like the people saw that and they started valuing Lightning McQueen for his values rather than for his things. But on the flip side of that, I think sadly there are also people who will only value you for what you can do for them, which is what happens to people like Doc, who when they get injured or can no longer perform in an industry that they have trained to be in their whole lives, they get forgotten because
Yeah.
they can no longer serve those people who only cared about them for that specific reason.
It was kind of like Lutz in Elemental, like he's supposed to be a really good player, but he's having a really hard time. And instead of having compassion like Wade does, it was very much like, God, what's wrong with you? Pull it together, man. And that's just a very common mindset in pro sports and not one I love. A note that I wrote down is just about being a good sport. Like in the beginning, Lightning McQueen is all about winning. It's all about the Piston Cup. It's all about his image. And that's something he kind of unlearns as he goes through his journey and reevaluates his priorities. And I like how like what you said in the final race, you know, people care more about the fact that he helped his competitor who wrecked cross the finish line even though he was in line to win. It reminds me of those videos. I love these videos online where it's like a marathon and someone is like stumbling and they're like unable to run, and so someone who could clearly run past them and maybe, you know, I don't know how marathons work if like you're ranked or whatever, but they could finish
It's
before
like
this
your time.
person.
Yeah.
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 And instead they like help, you know, pick this person up, and I think that's just really nice, and it's those little moments of like unity and togetherness that just like give me hope in
Yeah.
humanity.
Yeah. And another note about Cars is a literal metaphor that the movie sort of uses is that life is about the journey, not just the finish line. So it's about like how you get there and enjoying the process. And I think that says a lot, that can be spoken to in the fitness industry a lot. And I think a lot of people are so focused on a certain goal or a certain way that they want to look or a certain number on the scale or something very specific that they forget that if you don't enjoy the process, that this will not be something you can stay consistent with.
Yeah.
And I think that's a metaphor that comes up in Cars a lot, is just about like it was lonely to win. He was not a good person. He was
Mm-hmm.
not kind to anyone. And it wasn't until he found people who really taught him to be humble, who really
Yeah.
humbled him.
Yeah.
Uh yeah. And he sort of realized like I can do this. I can be the best, but I don't have to be the worst also at the same time, you know?
Yeah, yeah, like when he has to go to the next race in California because it's a three-way tie and they have to do a tiebreaker, and his agent is basically like, you get 20 tickets to give out to your friends so that they can go and, you know, go to the race. And he's like, who should I send them to? And he's pausing and hesitating, and the agent's like, okay, Mr. Big Shot, you're just so popular you can't even think about it. But the reality is like he doesn't have any friends because he's
Mhm.
been a jerk to everyone in his life. And that's unfortunately how some people find their claim to fame or their way to fame, but it can be lonely at the top if that's the way you want to do it. And again, just going
Yeah.
back to the third movie, I like that the narrative has shifted and now it's like when one of us shines we all shine, right? Because it's more so about the community and not so much about the individualism. And again, another note that I have about professional sports is that sometimes we focus too much on one player being like the name, the face, the brand of a sport, and I think that's first of all way too much pressure to be putting on one person, and it's not fair because there are obviously a lot more people than just this one person who are contributing to the growth of the sport and the team, right? These are team anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Life is a highway, everyone.
I when that movie came out, dude, that song was just everywhere. My mom loved it. I remember being at swim meets, and when we got iPods were fun. We had Bluetooth speakers and we would just blast Life is a Highway.
Mm.
Classic. Gotta love Rascal Flatts. What did little LB rate this movie?
Little LB rated Cars 4.9.
Wow. That's a very specific rating. Did he give
He
any
gave
ex?
me a lot of 4.9s. Yeah, I was asking him today. He did. He said that it's really good, but it's not a 5.
Fair enough.
He wants a more a different scale, I guess. He would have preferred out of 10, so he could have just given it a 9, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. We'll keep that in mind for next season, little LB. Thank you for your feedback.
Uh,
That's funny.
all right,
Um,
should we move on to Strange
mm,
Worlds?
yeah, let's do it.
Which for some reason is Strange Planet in my head and it will never not be.
I don't, yeah.
Probably because I was intoxicated when I saw this movie. I was like,
Make it any better?
see, I didn't dislike it,
Uh-huh.
but So then maybe.
It's not
um
it's not bad. I just feel like it wasn't revolutionary in some kind of way.
yeah, I think it was weird. I don't think it was bad. I just think it was odd.
It was strange.
And it was strange, and it was advertised as such. Although you and I did have this conversation about how it wasn't advertised really, besides just like the weird stuff. So just
And
like
it was a star-studded cast, and I don't remember seeing any press for it. Like I follow Pixar and Pixar Animation and Disney Movie, whatever their Instagram is. Like I follow all of their accounts, and I feel like I saw
it
nothing about it.
it was literally advertised. This is why I went intoxicated, because it was literally only advertised as like weird shapes and sounds. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to this sober.
That is amazing. So, do you want to give a
uh,
synopsis for listeners who are like, what is this movie even then?
so Strange World follows a legendary family of explorers called the Clads. Is that what they're
Clades.
called? The Clades, who must set aside their differences as they embark on a journey to a mysterious subterranean land inhabited by surreal life forms in order to save a miracle plant. Pandu?
Pando, yeah.
Pando? I'm saying all the names wrong. Clearly, I didn't watch this movie.
Like
That is
the Clades is like the big opening thing, and then they discover Pando, and that's the source of their energy,
that's the source
electricity,
of
and
their
all that stuff.
energy.
Yeah.
Great, wonderful. I know that the kid is like the main character is like a mixed kid, right?
Yes.
I love
And
that.
he has a
As a
boyfriend.
mix, yeah.
Yeah.
As
Which,
as a mixed girl myself, I love that the main character was a mixed kid. Yeah,
mhm. Yeah. I don't know if we've ever had.
a mixed kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Asha is also no. What is Asha in Wish? Oh, you haven't seen it. Never
I
mind.
haven't seen it yet,
We'll cut
but
that
we'll
out.
talk about it. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's been another mixed character.
If we're wrong, let
Correct me
us
if I'm
know.
wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Yeah. My thoughts on this movie, on Strange World, are that before and after seeing it, I thought that the world that they go to is essentially just quantum mania, or the quantum realm in the Ant-Man movies. Like it really just felt like that.
Yeah.
And it was a little disappointing to me to like feel that way,
It
you
feels
know?
like it was just like copy paste, but we change a few things and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I do think it was beautiful and interesting,
The opening
but
sequence, like the opening comic book sequence was very well done. That was really cool. I did really like that. I guess overall I again, I didn't not like the movie. I just it didn't feel, I guess, new and exciting. I don't know. I feel like almost every movie that comes out from Pixar, there's like a really forward thinking lesson or premise or takeaway or just something, or like the animation has done leaps and bounds. And I'm not saying the animation was bad. It was good, but it didn't really like keep my attention. But I guess some themes that I did pull were specifically like identity with the dad. So Jaeger Clade, that's his name. His whole thing is about being an adventurer, and he has no idea who he is without adventure. And that's one of the reasons why he actually like leaves his son during an expedition. And he even says to Searcher when they reunite in this strange land, strange world, that he's like, I wasn't a good dad. And this was a quote that I actually really liked. They're having a conversation, and Searcher, the son, is like, you left. Like, why did you leave? And Jaeger was like, I'm an adventurer. I'm not a dad. I wouldn't have been a good dad. And Searcher says something along the lines of like, you didn't even try. Like you could have been, you know? And I did like that conversation. I maybe wish that there was more, but I feel like maybe there were just too many things that the movie was trying to focus on, and it didn't like come together like some of the other movies did. And there felt like a lot of things just kind of thrown in to touch on certain points that people might relate to. Like I mentioned, their kid, I don't remember, Searcher's child, I don't remember his name, has a boyfriend, which is
Ethan?
really cool.
Ethan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jaeger, the grandfather, like doesn't have any qualms about it. He's like, oh, I'm sure he's a great guy, which I thought was really cool. We need some more LGBTQ plus representation. But that was kind of it. It felt, and I think I said this to you when we were texting about it, felt kind of like a tokenism LGBTQ relationship.
I think though, to play devil's advocate with you,
Of course.
I think though that we need more media that just kind of makes it not a big deal. You know what I
Like
mean? Or
normalizes
like,
it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, doesn't focus on it being a thing and just kind of like lets it
It's
be
yeah,
what it is.
that's
I
fair.
think there's a balance too. And like, I think it's like, yes, it may have felt a little like we're doing this to get clout or like to get recognition. Like the kiss in Lightyear. I don't know if you've seen Lightyear, right? The
I have, but I don't recall what you're talking
There
about.
are queer women who kiss in Lightyear, but it's like
Oh.
so fast.
Oh.
It's like so quick. It's like while
Hmm.
a door is closing or something.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. And so I think it's the same conversation that's happening there, where
Gotcha.
it's like, are we happy that it was so brushed to the side and glossed over, or we want to see more of a focus on it, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and I do feel like it's slowly becoming more of a central part of these stories. Like I think it's been things in passing, right? Like in Finding Dory, it's these two women who are, I'm assuming, are, moms, and their stroller gets bumped into or something. And I remember that being like a huge outrage with people. But it's funny you mentioned that. And again, just like the complexities and duality of life, because there's a show that I watch called The Great North, and they address like one of the characters has a boyfriend, and his family has just like from the get-go always been super supportive, and he's kind of bummed that his coming out wasn't more of a big deal. But and then there's like
Mm.
trans characters and things like that, and they don't make it a big deal. And I've talked to friends about it, and I'm like, I kind of think that they don't make it a big deal, it's just a thing. So it's really funny me now coming on this podcast being like, I kind of wish it was more of a thing.
Yeah. Another character that's queer that I just noticed in the rewatch is one of the police officers in Onward
Yes.
mentions having a wife or a
Yeah.
girlfriend who has a daughter. It's like I was like, wow.
Yeah.
They just they like to sprinkle it in without making it we would love more stories that centralize around
I
this.
think that's
Like,
what I mean. Like, because
yeah.
he is technically a main character, it feels like, because it's this whole generational thing of dad wants to be an adventurer, son does not. Son wants his son to be a farmer, son wants to be an adventurer, that kind of thing. So it feels like to me he is a main character, and that's why maybe I feel like it's glossed over. Whereas when it's kind of in the periphery, it's like, cool, they didn't make a big thing out of it because it's not
Right.
relevant to
Like,
this.
why
Yeah.
not have or do they? I haven't seen this movie in a couple years. Does the boyfriend go with them on the
No.
excursion? Yeah, so
Mm-mm.
like why not have the boyfriend with them and they're going on this adventure together?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would that have been such a big deal? Probably, because there's still a lot of very hateful people in this world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is too, it is a criticism that we can have of Disney and of quote unquote the mouse as a capitalistic
Yeah.
entity,
Yeah.
is that they still want to appeal to the masses and money is the most important thing to them. And just like how Target has decided to take Pride out of their stores in the South, Pride
I didn't know
merch out
about
of their,
that.
yeah, they're not selling any Pride stuff and they're doing like they're doing like subtle rainbow printed things that is their Pride collection, but it's not officially labeled as a Pride collection.
It's
Yeah.
it's performative at the end of the day. But that's not what we're talking about today. We can get into a whole conversation about that some other time. But
Yeah.
going back to Strange World, so yeah, the identity aspect for me was a theme. Accountability, the dad has to take accountability for his actions, and he does that, I think, by watching his own son take accountability for the ways that he is pressuring his own son to follow in his footsteps and blah 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 blah. And then I think the biggest thing is just like the environment and
Yeah.
the interconnectedness of nature. I made a comment about this too while I was watching it. Basically, I guess the crops on the on the top world are dying. So they go into this underworld to find the root of the pando. And there are these weird creatures like nibbling on it or attacking it. And so they're like, oh, the reason why the crops are dying in the top world is because the pando is reverting all of its energy and resources to protect its heart. And so searchers approach is to start killing all of these animals. And I made a note of like, so we're just going to kill these indigenous creatures? That's your solution? And I was going to get mad. But then the son, Ethan, I guess is his name, says the same thing. And he's like, why are we doing it this way? So I guess, just being respectful of nature is another takeaway or theme from Strange World.
Yeah, and also just that like caring about the earth and its resources is important, and it's not gonna last forever.
Because we don't have unlimited resources, and yeah, we'll talk about Wall-E in just a second because I think that's very connected. And I think that was the other thing for me too, is that the other movies we're going to talk about, Wall-E and specifically Onward, because I watched those back to back. I feel like Onward kind of did a better job of world building and like really putting you in the world, and you don't have questions. To me, and maybe it's because I'm not a farmer and I live in a very like suburban area, but I just like could not relate to the things happening in that movie. But I don't know. Anyway, what did little LB rate this?
He gave it a 4.
Interesting. For me, that feels very generous, but love that for him. And it spoke to maybe that was the whole thing. Maybe this was not for me and for my generation, and that's okay.
Yeah. I did not ask him why. So
interesting.
I have no
did you just go down the list and he was just like 4.9, 4, 5,
yeah,
0?
Yeah, pretty much.
I'll have to go back. I'm curious if he's ever given anything less than a 3. If he's ever given anything a 3. I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
He's a generous kid.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about Strange World before we move on to the next one? All right, cool. So next on our list is Ratatouille. I love this movie so much. So a little synopsis. This movie came out in 2007, which makes me feel so old. The movie is set mostly in Paris, and the plot follows a young rat named Remy who dreams of becoming a chef at Gusteau's restaurant and tries to achieve his goal by forming an unlikely alliance with the restaurant's garbage boy, Alfredo Linguini. And I love his name because they're just taking 2 kinds of pasta dishes and smushing them together. It's so funny.
I do love that. I do. A note about this character. I was watching Onward today. I did not watch Ratatouille, but I feel like Ian from Onward and Alfredo are like animated very similarly.
They are just like the really lean,
lanky,
and then curly hair. Yeah, I could see that. That's really funny. Fun fact, because I like bringing him up apparently now that I don't know why. Anyway, fun fact. I feel like I'm bringing him up every episode now, but Peter Sohn, the director of Elemental, is actually the voice of Emil, his brother, Remy's brother. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
But anyway, so the movie kind of follows 3 different characters and their journeys, specifically mainly Remy and Linguini. But I threw Colette in there in my notes because she has this really good speech about how hard it was for her as a woman being in like a male dominated space, and the way that she had to work twice as hard and how she's not taken seriously. And I think that helps change Linguini's mindset too about things, and he starts to take it more seriously, even though like he didn't have passions of being a chef, which I think is also another reason why Colette is just like really irritated with him, because he's kind of thrown into her space for her to train. But it's because Remy makes this dish taste better, and now everyone wants to know what it is, and they think that Linguini made it, and so they team up so that he can become a chef basically. I really do like the motto of this movie of like the whole anyone can cook. It reminds me of Zootopia, their whole slogan of like anyone can be anything. Yeah. And I think that's really sweet. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to it, but I do like the theme or the lesson that like you can do almost anything that you set your mind to and work hard. I think that's an important lesson for, anyone at any stage of their life, but especially children.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that a rat can become like a top chef is pretty big deal.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big thing.
Would you eat at his restaurant?
No. As a woman who lives in a city that is
Fair.
where I see rats daily
Oh
and know
man.
how dirty it's so funny because I do feel like the point of the movie is like rats are not disgusting. We treat them like they're vermin. They are vermin.
But they
Rats are vermin.
are.
We can just treat them like vermin because
No, I have seen those videos of the giant rats stealing pizza slices and like running down the subway tracks with them. It, it's gross. We love
uh
the thought, we love the theme, we love the lesson and the story, but
right.
in real
I
life it doesn't
love
always translate.
correct. Like it reminds me of the scene in Enchanted when the chipmunk is in the restaurant and they're like closing it down because and I'm like, that chipmunk didn't do anything wrong. That is a chipmunk, not a rat. It's so funny how like it is different how you view these different animals or whatever. But like again, yes, love the theme of like, you know, preconceived notions exist, and just because you are perceived as a certain way doesn't mean you actually are that way, and da 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 da. But like, I don't want a rat
But this
touching
is
my
why it's
food.
a Pixar movie and not real life because
Exactly. And I do think the way that they go about it is wonderful. Like he uses Linguini as a puppet, so he's not actually touching any of the food. I like that, you
I
know?
remember watching the behind the scenes about that and how the animators were talking about animating the scene where he's like dropping things and catching things and, spinning around to grab just items. And it was really, really cool. It gave me this movie definitely deepened my appreciation for animation and the hard work animators have to make things like this look so realistic and seamless and just yeah, it's really cool. It's not so much that the lesson of anyone can be anything or anyone can cook is like a rat can become a chef, but perhaps, the breaking of barriers while the movie follows a male rat and a man, I think it can also be applied to, Colette and her journey and how she can be a chef too, or she can be a cook too, despite it being this certain space and this time setting and things like that. And just breaking those kinds of barriers. And then what's his face? The food critic at the end, changing his mind about what it means to be a chef, what it means to make good food even and enjoy food and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
And I think that does say something about like showing up in industries where you feel like you might not belong. And I know I've talked about this at length on the podcast before, but like just me existing in the fitness industry with the body I have and showing up like can help change people's minds
Mhm.
about what is considered quote unquote normal to them. It's like, okay, you can judge me all you want. You can judge my body all you want, but until you take one of my classes, until you work with me, until you train with me, you have no idea what I'm capable of.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and then I might change your mind,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. So all of it to say, sign up for Geeknasium, take one of her lessons. Shameless plug.
Shameless, thank you. And I also, there's points in the movie where Remy himself, even though he's the one that's, got these dreams and aspirations, and once he's actually there in it doing the thing, he has a lot of imposter syndrome, and he's like, can I do this? Am
Yeah.
I a good chef? Do I
Yeah.
belong here? And, you know, throughout the journey of the movie, it's you realize, yes, you do, because you have the talent and the skills. And I also think it's a commentary on like finding your strengths, what you're good at, what are you naturally good at, what feels good for you to do, and follow those intuitions, follow that intuition.
Yeah. And also and then the lesson of like, if you never try, you'll never know. And it's okay to experiment. One of the notes, and I don't remember why exactly I wrote this, was recipes are more like guidelines. And I think it's mainly because this really pivotal scene, Remy changes the recipe at the very last minute and it like evokes something in the food critic. Why am I forgetting his name? Anton Ego. There it is. And it ends up working out in the end. So, experiment, try new things, take a recipe, a guideline, and then make it your own.
Yeah.
Learn from people, I think, is the other thing too, is like you can look up to someone, appreciate what they have to offer, and then figuring out how to make that work for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Let's move on to Monsters Inc.
Yeah.
Yeah. I freaking love this movie, man.
I love it. uh
I love Monsters Inc. And so it came out in 2001. The first, like, Monsters Inc. in general came out in 2001. One of my favorite movies. I don't know if I told you this, but I have a Boo baby doll.
Oh.
Yeah. Found her when I was home cleaning out my childhood bedroom. And she squeezed her and she still goes, Wazowski. It's so
Oh,
cute.
that's cute. I love that.
But anyway, synopsis for those of you who might need to hear it is Monsters Inc. is about the two monsters, Sully and his one-eyed partner, Mike Wazowski, who are employed at the titular energy producing factory, Monsters Incorporated, which generates power by scaring human children. However, the monster world believes that children are toxic. And when a little human girl, Boo, sneaks into the factory, she must be returned home before it's too late. Do you know the fun fact about Boo's real name?
Mary Gibbs.
Yeah.
And how people think, or I think it's been confirmed that she is a character in Toy Story 3.
Yes, that's confirmed too.
Yeah.
The other thing is that she's just named after the child who voiced her.
That's so cute. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. They were like, because Boo is the name that Sully gives her because she keeps going, Boo, which is very cute.
It's so.
Yeah. One thing I will say about watching this movie this time around is now that I'm nannying a literal 2-year-old, they got the child behavior down 100% correctly.
Well, that's what I heard, is they just let this girl play with some toys and they just like followed her around with the mic and just captured her singing and playing.
The main characters that we follow are Sully, Mike, Boo, and Randall, who is the antagonist of this movie. He's basically, Sully is the top scarer, and Randall is always just like one notch beneath him.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that Randall is trying to cheat to win the scaring competition, but Randall is actually creating some machine that is, what does the machine do? I don't remember.
It sucks the scream out of children. So after everyone goes home for the evening, the reason why Sully finds Boo is that Mike Wazowski forgets something. Sully goes to the scaring floor, finds a door, and it's revealed that Randall has been trying to get children basically after hours and set them up in this machine. And then we find out that the president of the corporation, Mr. Waternoose, is actually the mastermind behind all of that. And he is the true villain of this movie for sure. Oh. And Randall is just like a pawn.
That's true.
Yeah.
But Randall is also just unlikable through the whole thing too. So
no, he's a jerk, and he's just a big jerk. And he's Boo's main monster, and she's scared of him. Yeah.
She's so scared of him. She's so cute. She's so goddamn cute, you know?
Another just one of those like well animated. It's funny because she actually kind of looks like an early concept of Vanellope.
Yeah. They people do compare them a lot.
I could see that. Yeah. I mean,
people compare them a lot.
When it's cute and it works, just keep doing it, I guess.
Yeah, just make them look the same.
Because Agnes from Despicable Me looks pretty much the same too, and she's freaking adorable. I love her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I do have qualms with this movie, and it did come out in 2001. So again, this was the times that we were in, but there's so much fat shaming of Sully in this movie.
And he's not even fat. He's just big and hairy.
Yeah, he's just a large guy. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we using such language surrounding a large, scary monster? I didn't enjoy that. I do like the training montage that they go through, and I definitely have an idea for Geeknasium stuff, because like Mike's like, it's a top bunk, it's the bottom bunk, it's a sleepover, and it's like, you know, that kind of like, he's supposed to be like scaring all these kids, and he's like, you have to like sneak around, and then you have to do fast feet, and it's just like, I was like, yeah, the way the monsters train, I could totally train. Yeah. So anyway, It's in the brain. It's in the brain. I like the beginning training montage, except for all the fat shaming.
I
We could
would
train
love
someone
though.
without fat shaming them.
This is true. And I would love if you wore like a green tank top with an eyeball on it and you could be like Mike Wazowski. That'd be really cute.
It's funny, I am wearing a green tank
You
top right
are
now,
wearing a green
so
tank top today for
it's
those who
Oogie
aren't
Boogie
watching.
Day.
Oh, cute.
It kind of looks like an eyeball. Anyway, I could just wear this. Anyway.
Yeah. I think for me, the themes of this movie definitely friendship, deconstruction. You know, the entire monster world thinks that human children's screams are the source of energy, and then come to find out it's actually laughter. Laughter is more powerful than screams, which I think is, it might be a bit of a stretch to read into that, but for me, it might mean something about how like joy is more powerful than fear or something. You know, I
Yeah.
think I grew up in a very like fear mongering space, and life was not that enjoyable. And then unlearning that and rediscovering the joy of life and inner child and all of that has made life all the more fun and enjoyable.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm wondering if this is like a Bolt scenario where there was like some person who like gave the monsters a delusion that they had to scare children, or if it's just something that like the monsters as a whole collective have just like known, like we like a
Uh,
societal collective is like we must scare children, or if it was like someone somewhere was like, I'm going to trick all of the monsters into scaring children. That'd be an interesting.
that would be. I don't know if they explore that because they don't really go into that in Monsters University either. It's just like this has always been the way, and it's going to continue being the way. Because I don't even think they go into it. I watched the first season of Monsters at Work, and it's basically the Monsters Inc. TV show, and that one's really interesting because it follows a recent college graduate who has always wanted to work at Monsters Inc. And he was like a top scarer of his college, and this was like right after they changed their whole motto from "we scare because we care" to whatever the new one is, and now they're focusing on children's laughs. So he has to go through this like whole retraining process, and Mike Wazowski is giving a whole training on how to be funny. But yeah, that's a really good question.
I speaking of Mike, I love his unrelenting optimism of like every
Yeah.
single time he is seen like on TV or on the cover of a magazine, he's blocked by something and he's just always like, yay! Like
Yeah, he's like, I can't believe it. I'm in a commercial. I can't believe it. I'm on a magazine. But the like you can't see that it's him, but
yeah,
you know it's him. And I think that's really sweet. And you don't always have to be like the main person in things to enjoy something, to enjoy
being
your
part of them.
accomplishments, right? Like you don't always have
Yeah.
to be first place to celebrate your achievements, right?
It reminds me of like being in the cosplay community, and I know it can be related to other things too, but like I was thinking about this a lot this weekend. I was at a con where I didn't have a lot of friends there. I didn't know a ton of people. It was actually like I knew people there, but it's not necessarily my scene. Like
Mm.
it's people who I know, but they're not like my closest cosplay friends. And it's the ones who like to drink at cons or like to party at cons or like to do things that I don't normally do at a con. I will not drink at a con. I can't. I am too old for that, essentially.
Well,
That's
also it
basically.
looked like it was so hot there, and I don't like
It
drinking when it's
was.
hot anyway. So, bleh.
I'm not a day drinker. I absolutely can't day drink anymore because I will get a headache and fall asleep by 4
Mm-hmm.
p.m. Like that's basically just my who I am now.
I'm so
But
old.
like,
Anyway,
but I just want to like to play on that. I kind of, even though I was there, I was having FOMO, if that makes sense. Like
sure,
I was
yeah,
experiencing this like, oh, I feel like everyone else is having so much more fun than me. Am I being like, and I do think there was a part of me that was like being a little pessimistic and all of that. And now I'm seeing like videos and I wasn't like part of the cosplay runway because there were so many people there. I got overwhelmed and had to leave and like all this stuff. And it's like,
yeah.
I can look at that experience and appreciate the good times that I had, and I don't have to be as optimistic as Mike was, but I can take the people who were kind to me. I can take the people who were there for me and kind of take those experiences as a positive. And so like instead of being sad and looking at social media and being like, why didn't this photographer shoot with me? Why am I not in this video? Like just looking at like oh, but I met these two like really cool people in the cosplay green room, and I
Mm-hmm.
shot with an actually really nice photographer who basically I was having a mental breakdown because my She-Hulk makeup was melting off, and he was like, shut up, you look amazing, let's take pictures. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think it's a space for a little both but having
Mhm.
that like Mike optimistic energy sort of reminds me like, yeah, sure, it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, but I still have some positive takeaways from it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. No, yeah, I think it's the both and both can exist. You can find the positive without veering into toxic positivity. And then you can acknowledge that, like, yeah, there was a little FOMO. It wasn't exactly how you imagined the day would go or the weekend would go, but
Mhm.
you were still able to find those moments.
Are we okay to move on to Monsters University?
Heck yeah, because it's the prequel to the movie we're talking about. And I love, 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 love. I love this movie so much. It came out in 2013, which is when I graduated high school. So there was a lot of like relatability as far as I'm going to
Mhm.
college and blah, blah, blah. So, anyway, for those who haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a while, Monsters University tells the story of our main characters from Monsters Inc., Sully and Mike Wazowski, and their time in college, where they actually start off as bitter rivals, but then slowly become best friends. So, this is like their origin story, which I love. Some people have been like, it actually doesn't make sense in the canon because in Monsters Inc., they talk about being friends in the fourth grade, but then they don't meet until college. What's that all about? I, the way I kind of like fix that in my brain as a little head canon is that it's just like a turn of phrase. Like, you've been this way since the fourth grade, as hyperbole. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
This was my first time ever watching this movie, and I
What?
loved it.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I had never seen it. I had never seen it. Yeah,
Okay, give me all your thoughts. Let's hear them.
I loved it. It was definitely unexpected that they were rivals at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
and that a maybe common enemy brought them together. There is a part of me that wonders about Mike and Sully's relationship and sort of like, is Mike considered less than Sully because he's like the scare can guy? What are they? The technician versus like the actual scarer, you know?
Oh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
And
He's kind of like
so
the
there's a
sidekick, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was like. So he's going to scare school. He has this big dream to be a scarer, and like he doesn't actually ever become a scarer, right? Like he just kind of becomes the scare technician who like handles all the side stuff. And so, you know, my heart just kind of broke knowing that Mike's dream was to be a big scarer, you know?
Yeah.
And I do love the journey that they go on in the film and he realizes like there's other ways to he finds his way. And I think
Yeah.
that's really cool. Like so many people judged him and he's such like a good example of like studying your way into something,
Yeah.
like
Like
he
training
eats
and,
and
book
breathes.
smarts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas like Sully comes from a long line of scares, the name has a legacy. And he thinks that's all he needs is he has that raw talent. He doesn't need to study, he doesn't need to
Mhm.
train, he doesn't need to practice. And in the end,
He
he's
doesn't
failing
make
the
the cut.
class. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I just really love the themes of like found family, community, their little
Fraternity.
KO. What does it stand for? Yeah, their little
Oh,
fraternity.
okay. Uzma Kappa. We're
Oh, Uzmakaba, yeah.
okay. I love that
I love
too.
them so much.
Yeah, I love that too because right before I had watched that in my most recent therapy session, my therapist was just like, what's like a mantra or an affirmation that'll get you through the week? And I was just like, I'm okay. Like, I am okay. I will be okay. And then I watched this movie and I completely forgot about Uzma Kappa. And they're like, we're okay. And I was like, yes, we are.
Yeah. There was a moment in the movie that really, really like struck me. And again, I can relate it to cosplay community. I can relate it to fitness. I think anyone who's going through a comparison journey can relate to this, but it's when the Uzma Kappa are like, we can't win this because they're comparing themselves to the other fraternity, the big one. I don't remember what they're called
I don't
either.
remember either. Yeah.
Yeah, the big scare one that really that had Sully in it at first, and then once he got kicked out of the scare school, they dropped him. Uzma Kappa is basically a bunch of misfits, right? And
Yeah.
they are oddballs, and they're, you know, a little bit weird, and there's obviously nothing wrong with that. And Mike, was it Mike? Whose idea was it to bring them to Monsters Inc. to like peek in on the monsters?
Well, they broke in, and that was Mike's idea. Yeah.
Well, okay, so anyway, I don't remember who says this because I didn't write it down. But the part that really struck me is like when they are watching the monsters who are actually working at Monsters Inc., the
Mm,
actual scare monsters, and someone says, "See what they all have in common?" And then Sully's like, "Not really." And then the answer to that is exactly. It's like they have
yeah.
nothing in common. They're
Yeah.
all unique and different and special and have something that they bring to the table. Like it's not about all being giant,
One way.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, like to be a successful scarer, it comes in all shapes, all sizes,
Yeah.
all different abilities. Like, and I thought that that was like a really striking moment of the movie because I was like, wow, I needed to see this today.
Yeah. Especially when we live in a society where certain people that share common body shapes or, whatever get elevated and promoted as like the goal, Yeah, I really like that scene too. I kind of forgot about that, but I like
Mhm.
that one. I like that one a lot. For me, this movie is just the classic, like, not exactly the happy ending we expected, but they still made it work and succeeded by being flexible and adaptable. And actually, before I go into that, to your point, to me, this movie is kind of a contrast to Ratatouille. Like Ratatouille is anyone can be a cook, and Zootopia is like anyone can be anything. And this movie kind of says the opposite. Not so much that you can't do anything, but sometimes a big dream you're chasing just doesn't work out. And it's not a negative thing about you, but it might knock you off off your feet a little bit, and it might make you question things about yourself. But I think the biggest takeaway is that you still have something unique about you, and those traits might help others succeed, like how he does with basically training Sully. And
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, I really like.
Well, it reminds me of my journey in the acting industry, right? It's like I was so passionate since I was a child about
Mm,
being an actor. And I went to not only elementary school, middle school, high school, and college for it. And then I moved to New York for it. And it was like my passion and my purpose for a very long time.
mm,
And then when I started realizing that I was not getting booked, I was like, I don't want this to be my life, you know? And it it was hard and disappointing, and I have found a career now that I really love and enjoy, and I'm never going to not say I'm an actor because I do have all of that training, right?
yeah.
It reminds me of that too, is like, you know, Mike was a scarer because he has all of the abilities for it. He just isn't quite cut out, you know?
Well, and also to your point, and I think to Mike, like he has the training and the skill and the education, and he's using it in a different way. So in the end, they get kicked out of college, actually kind of makes sense because of the things that they do. And their dreams of becoming scarers get crushed, but they make it work. They actually start in the mailroom and then work their way up and become one of the top scarers. Like I think in Monsters Inc. history, I think is something they say in Monsters Inc. the first movie. And I think I personally needed to see that because so much of my life has taught me that you should just succeed right away. A little bit of that
Mm.
is perfectionism. A little bit of that might be this like American dream immigrant story. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't completely unpacked it, but I forget the value of stepping stones sometimes. And in the era of life that I am in, I really do have to go back to basics. And there isn't anything wrong with starting at level 1 and working your way up. Yeah. And again, this whole like not exactly the ending we expected is just a really big theme throughout a lot of different Pixar movies. This one, Ratatouille, even, right? Like his big dream is to work at Gusteau's. He does for a little bit, find out he's a rat and they have a bunch of rats working in the kitchen. So the place shuts down. But then he gets to open his own restaurant. That wasn't always the goal or the dream, but you know, he gets to fulfill his chef dreams and things like that. So yeah. Any other notes about Monsters Inc. before we move on to the next movie?
Nope.
Okay. Cool, cool.
All right. It is time to talk about Wally.
Yes.
Wally. Wally follows a solitary robot named Wally on a future uninhabitable deserted Earth in 2805, left to clean up garbage. He is visited by a robot called Eve, sent from the starship Axiom, with whom he falls in love with and pursues across the galaxy. Wally is the most precious movie to ever exist.
It's so good. And there's little to no dialogue. I remember watching this movie or studying this movie for a script writing course in college. And basically the main lesson was like, look at how this isn't your typical script. It isn't like scene, dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. It really reads like poetry and it's so beautiful. And if you can get your hands on it, I highly recommend everyone just at least read the first page. It's gorgeous. The way that they just like explain everything and evoke Wally's emotion and yeah, it's fantastic. I love this movie so much. I always have a little existential crisis about it because it is about a dystopian world. You know, the world is no longer inhabitable because we've killed the planet and now they have to live in space. And I'm like, damn, that feels a lot closer than 2000, what was it? 2805, 2080. I don't know how to say that.
2805.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is,
700. I guess it's, yeah, 700 years in the future.
yeah.
When
But
it came out, it was 700 years in the future.
yeah, but it feels
Yeah. Well, especially seeing that like by and large is like my first commentary, my first note when
mm-hmm.
watching this was like the way that big brands have such a monopoly on things in our capitalistic society is heartbreaking. And it is shown through Wally as well. I mean, granted, we don't have a brand that like owns absolutely everything yet, but it's getting there.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
getting there.
It really is. It's like I see, we don't have to keep this in the episode, but whenever I see billboards and ads for Amazon Medical, like I guess they're branching into the medical space. Yeah, it's terrifying as if they don't have enough information on us.
A fun fact about this movie that I had to look up because I knew that it was Sigourney Weaver is that the robot, like the spaceship, is voiced by Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah.
And I think that's funny because she's also the like face of the not the planetarium, the
Yeah.
rehabilitation center in
Yeah.
Finding Dory. And I was like, is this also Sigourney Weaver? Is she just gonna voice all of these like uh, disembodied voices?
I
Like,
would love that if that becomes just like a running gag through all Pixar movies is just anytime there's announcements, speakers, AI, whatever, it's Sigourney Weaver. I'm down for
geez.
that.
Same. Yeah, I know we have a lot to talk about in terms of consumption in Wally, but I have a very complicated relationship with the way that human beings are depicted in the Wally movie.
Fair. Fair.
It,
Yeah.
yeah, I understand the commentary on living like an entire sedentary life, like, and I think they do a good job of explaining that. Like, these people have just become so addicted to their screens that they never leave their chair.
Mm-hmm. And they have all
Uh,
these like robots and droids to bring them food, bring them
doing
water.
everything for them, bathing
Mm-hmm.
them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and eating and drinking nothing but big gulps, right? But I still think it's inherently very fat phobic
Mm.
to
Mm-hmm.
be depicting people in this way.
Because it's
Uh,
bad. Like it's being depicted
mhm,
as this is a bad because
mhm.
everything about the movie is like the world is dead basically and that's bad and now this is the life that we may have because of
Yes.
this and this is bad. I see what you're
And
saying.
they're trying to give this message of like we should be moving our bodies more, we should be having more face-to-face interactions, we should be doing this, but the way that they convey that message is using a fear of becoming fat. Like this is what you'll become if you
Mm,
don't
interesting.
get off
Yeah.
your phone. This is what you'll become if you don't move your body more. And I just hate that. I hate that a
Like in the
lot.
same way they're scaring people is like, this is going to be the world if we don't start protecting the planet. Like, this is going to be what you look like if you don't
You
move
don't,
and get off your screen. Okay. I never thought about that before. I appreciate you bringing that up. I hadn't, yeah, that's not ever a
yeah.
takeaway because that's
It's
not the lens I
it's
see things.
not only is it fat phobic, but it's also ableist. It makes you seem like if you
Ooh. Uh-huh.
I think that even if most humans lived an entirely sedentary life, there would still be body diversity.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Just
so,
in the same way that you take a bunch of people who do exercise and eat the same things and they're all going to look different. I would imagine it
mhm.
would be the same thing on the other end.
Yeah, and I do love that the woman who Wally like wakes up and gets away from her screen is actually like excited to see that they have a pool, and she and that guy like sort of get in it and start kicking water at each
Yeah.
other. And I think it's like I can't personally see a time where humanity will ever get to a point where we don't move our bodies anymore. I feel like it's an inherent need. Like it's just
Hmm.
something that we crave. But I also think that on the flip side, the way that Wally frames it is it showcases that it's not our fault that the humans end up like this, if that makes sense. Because the humans who do wake up from their screens start to experience true happiness when they're like, oh, there's a whole world out here that I'm not experiencing, right? And so it's kind of like a commentary on capitalism and on society and on the direction that we're going of like if we keep going this way, you know, in the future it will just become the norm. And so I think it's like it's a nice commentary to sort of be like, and it's not your fault,
Yeah.
like there's only so much. But what I also love is that once the captain of the ship discovers Earth and he starts Googling, like, well, not Googling, whatever the equivalent of it is,
Yeah.
right? And he starts like asking more questions, like, what is dancing? What is grass? What is this?
Yeah.
What is that? And he just gets so curious. And then he's like, oh, what is this quote? I know I have it written down somewhere, but it's like, there's a whole world out there. I can't just like leave it. Like it's something about like the world is worth saving. Like I can't just stay up here and not, you
Oh,
know.
yeah. You wrote it down. I found it. I can't just sit here and do nothing. It's all I've ever done. That's all anyone on this blasted ship has ever done. Nothing. I don't want to survive. I want to live. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love that. So it's like, I do have, it's a very complicated thing because it's like, I understand the message that they're trying to give. And I understand, we don't want to go into a direction where robots are doing everything for us and we're addicted to our screens and we don't ever experience going into a swimming pool. I think that was the moment where I was like, I don't think humans will ever get to a point where we don't move our bodies because like I just can't imagine even in a post-apocalyptic society, like I can't imagine someone not wanting to get into like water or not wanting to like, like there's
Yeah.
something about like going swimming or like running through a field or like, like those kinds of
Yeah.
things.
But I feel like
And
just like in the movie, it's because it's been generations upon generations of
yeah,
not even knowing that that's an option.
yeah.
So that desire has kind of been, while I do agree that I think it's like an inherent need, it's been dismissed or, pushed aside. And
Evolutionary, right? Like it was
yes, 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 yes.
evolutionary
Yeah.
lost,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's all I'm gonna really say on that because I think it's like way out of my capacity and realm to like even digest. But that's my feelings on the way that humans are. I do love how all the humans come together in the end and they start walking and it's very kind of touching, kind of weird. As it's like
Yeah. I had, just like I mentioned in, I think the Wreck-It Ralph episode, I have weird, I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way when there are just like bodies piling on top of each other and then like moving together. It's just, yeah, it's just like a weird, I don't know. I don't know if it's like a phobia or just like, I don't know. It's just weird to me. But yeah, I never really thought about that. So I appreciate you bringing that up because again, I watch these movies all the time, but I love that we bring new and different and fresh perspectives when we watch it for the purposes of this podcast.
Yeah, but we can touch on Wally and Eve real quick. I mean, Wally is just such a pure character. I love that he watches Hello Dolly every day,
Yeah. Doop, 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 doop,
and he just
doop,
wants to be
doop.
loved, and he just wants to find love, and then one day he finds it. And,
Yeah.
it's just so sweet. Their whole story is so sweet. The way that, like, when he gives her the plant and then she kind of like shuts down because that was her directive, right? Like that
Yeah.
was her mission. And the way that he like tries to take care of her even though she's unconscious, quote unquote. There was a part
Yeah.
of me that's like, where's the consent here? But I think it's fine.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything creepy besides try to hold her hand.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but
But it's like
it's really
pure.
sweet.
Yeah.
He gets humanized,
Yeah.
because he is surrounded by the remnants of humanity and culture and things like that. And just, I guess, like maybe through
Yeah.
osmosis or just, being in it, he becomes a little bit human and
He
develops
does.
feelings. And I, yeah, I think this is not that it's underrated, but I think it gets overshadowed sometimes by some of the other movies. This is an A+ movie in my book. I love it. Other than what you brought up, I like the message about protecting our planet. And it wasn't until you mentioned the quote from the captain, which I forgot about. I didn't really have anything on like a healing journey, but I think a lot of people can definitely relate to this light bulb moment or the switch that can happen when they finally realize that they've just been surviving up until this point and they want more and they want to live. And it can be a very scary thing because it's an unknown, right? And it can take a lot of courage, just like the people in this movie. They don't know really if Earth is even there since they discovered the plant, but they take a risk, they take a chance, and they begin to thrive and heal pretty much. Like they heal the Earth, and I think they're healing themselves. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah. Also at the very end when Wally sort of gets like all beat up and banged up and
Oh
then
my
Eve
god.
puts him back together and he's been like sort of factory
Reset,
reset.
yeah.
And for a moment you're like, where's the Wally I know and love? It reminds me of how sometimes when we are really triggered or traumatized, we can go into like a sort of factory reset ourselves and we kind of lose a little bit of who we are, and it takes the people that love us, who
Yeah.
understand us to kind of feel like ourselves again. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really beautiful perspective on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, love this movie. What did little LB rate Wally?
He gave Wally a 4.5.
Lower than
I
I would
think
have
for
expected, but
kids,
that's
yeah,
okay.
I think for kids it's kind of boring, I will
That
say.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. He also, I forgot, he gave Monsters Inc. a 5.
Yeah. Good. He's
Yeah,
redeemed
Monsters
himself.
Inc. got a 5. Yeah. Monsters Inc. got a 5, Wally got a 4.5.
I mean, that makes sense. Like we talked about in the Up episode with Anna Lauren, her kid didn't really understand like the opening sequence of Up because no one's talking. And I think maybe
Hmm.
kind of the same here, just because, kids don't have that experience and perspective to like see all, like read between the lines and get the context clues, right?
Yeah.
They kind of need to be like handed, like, this is the issue and this is the problem, which is fine because they're children. Of course. That's, you know,
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah. Shall we move on to A Bug's Life?
Let's do
Ooh.
it.
This was one of the first Pixar movies that came out. It came out in 1998. And in this film, a misfit ant named Flick looks for quote unquote tough warriors to save his ant colony from a protection racket run by a gang of grasshoppers. However, the quote warriors he brings back are actually a troop of circus bugs. Oh, the film's plot was actually inspired by Aesop's fable, The Ant and the Grasshopper, which I think I have read at one point. My grandparents used to have like a first edition of Aesop's fables. They don't have it anymore, but I do think I've read that. But I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah. I love this movie. I didn't remember how much I loved it until I watched it again.
Good. And I'm so sad that they got rid of Bugs Life Land in Disney land. It makes me
Oh,
very
is that a
excited.
thing? I didn't even know that
It
was a
used
thing.
to be, yeah, like you could walk through and they'd have like the grass and straws and like you'd be like the be the perspective of ants and they have these rides and actually I have a picture of it from when I went to Pixar Studios. There used to be a Heimlich little like roller coaster for children and they have one of the roller coaster cars in front of one of the buildings and you can like go in and sit in it and there's a button where he speaks to you and it's really cute. Yeah.
That does sound cool. Did you know that Hayden Panettiere voices Dot?
I did know that. Isn't that
That blew my mind. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Cause she's a baby in this. And like
Yeah.
it's wild to me too that like I grew up basically watching her career grow.
Mm,
Like
hmm.
almost anything she was in from when she was a little baby, like Bug's Life, Remember the Titans, to Heroes, to Bring It On, to Nashville when she was in that, it was wild. Makes me feel
Yeah.
really old, but that's okay. Anyway, my little, I guess, fun fact or anecdote about Bug's Life is I loved this movie as a kid. Like, I was obsessed with this movie. I wanted to be an ant. I specifically wanted to be Dot because she's freaking cute. And I remember Disneyland, I don't know if they still do it, but there was a room where you could go in and it was like sit in this chair and get scanned to see which Disney character you are and I got Dot and I was really really excited and happy and then we
Oh,
went to do their parade. I don't remember which one or what it was called, but I was sitting in the front row and a flick is walking by and there's my parents have a picture of it and he waves to me and then he patted my head and then walked away and I was just like screaming. I was having the time of my life. So I
oh
really
my
really really
God.
love this movie and that memory and yeah, it was a good time.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think this movie has a lot of the same sort of themes that we've talked about with the other movies. Like, you know, Flick is like just a quintessential like clumsy klutz, like just keeps messing up, and he really is doing what he thinks is best for the colony. Like he's really actually trying to help, and everyone just treats him like he is so stupid. And it just like that's
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like no one gives him a chance, no one gives him the time of day. And even though he messes up, like there's no room for him to fail because the people are so unforgiving. And that is
Yeah.
really disappointing.
Well, for me, it's a representation of like how reluctant people are to change, of innovation, of, and I mean, I'm
Mhm.
guilty of this too. Like, I think technology is growing at a very rapid, uncomfortable pace, in my opinion. But
Mhm.
yeah, specifically in this movie, it's people are unwilling to change. Like, this is the way it's always been. And I think you made a note about this, but one of my favorite parts is when they stand up to their oppressor
Mhm.
and they change their lifestyle and they no longer are ruled by fear of the grasshoppers. They're no longer controlled by them and they get to thrive as their own free colony.
Yeah. Yeah, you saying that, like the speech that Hopper gives was like, if you let one ant stand up to us, they will all stand up. Those puny ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, that there goes our way of life. It's not about food, it's about keeping those ants in line. Like
uh yeah.
that is a literal verbalization of oppression,
Yeah.
systemic oppression. Like,
And the fact that it's Kevin Spacey voicing Hopper just like adds a whole other level of ick.
did you see my note about that?
I didn't know.
I literally have a
That
note
too.
that says knowing that Hopper is Kevin Spacey makes this 100 times more terrifying.
Oh my god. Just yeah. A lot of
So
ick.
icky.
A lot
So
of ick.
icky. Yeah.
Yeah. What
Um,
did little LB give this? Because I know it's like an older movie.
yeah, I don't think he rated this one. Let me see. Um, oh, he gave it a 4.5 also.
It's
Same
acceptable.
as Wally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the different lessons. I think there's a lot of parallels with Monsters University of like these circus bugs think that they're only ever going to be circus bugs and that's all they're ever going to be good for. And then this quote unquote outsider Flick comes in and is like, I believe you are warriors. And they're like, not really, but it'll get us out of this situation. So we'll run with it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
then
also just love them being actors.
yeah,
They're such actors, and
they're
it's
true
as a
theater
person
kids. It's
As
so
a person who grew up doing theater, yeah, I was like, relatable, relatable. I knew every single one of these people.
yes, like the dramatic flair and the mantis and the moth, but then also like the stick, the stick guy, and yeah, it's just great. It's great.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, yeah, just like Flick, I think my only note encouragement for people is share your ideas with the world. You never know what impact it's going to have and what lives you're going to change.
I mean, the bird ingenious. Build a bird.
Yeah, right? So smart. Yeah,
So smart.
very resourceful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Incredible.
And then our last movie that we are going to talk about today, Onward, which I love so much. You can read the synopsis, but little fun fact, I didn't like this movie the first time I saw it. And it took, I know. Can you believe it? I thought it was I thought Barley was super annoying. I couldn't stand
Well, it's
him.
Chris Pratt, so
Well, this was like before we found out Chris Pratt is like not great,
yes,
but
but I
he's
when I
also
was
not a good
watching it
voice
this time
actor.
around,
Anyway.
no, he just sounds like himself. Get a hobby, dude. I don't know. I think people need to be more creative with their casting, is all I'm gonna say on that.
Fair. Fair, fair, fair. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This came out in 2020. It was the last movie I saw in theaters before shutdown, lockdown.
Oh, snap. I didn't realize that's how early in 2020 it came out because I didn't see it until it hit Disney Plus.
It came out on March 6th, so it was like before like lockdown happened like later, like the 12th, 11th. Yeah. It's the last movie I saw.
Whoa.
Yeah, because I've heard some people say that it came out straight to Disney Plus. I was like, no, I saw it in theaters. It was not a straight to Disney
I think it was
Plus
just so short-lived because
release.
of, yeah, the shutdowns.
Hmm.
Dang.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Um,
You got to see it on the big screen. That's great.
I did. I did. So, for those who need to know, Onward is set in a suburban fantasy world for the modern day. The film follows two elf brothers named Ian and Barley Lightfoot, who set out on a quest to find an artifact that will temporarily bring their deceased father, Wilden, back for 24 hours. So I'm surprised that more like D&D nerds don't love this movie. I mean, maybe they do. I don't know, but I haven't
You
heard a
just might
lot
not get.
talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a one of my best friends is a huge nerd, huge D&D nerd, and she absolutely loves this movie. Like
Yeah,
obsessed with this
it's a
movie.
literal quest. Like,
It is. Yeah, and I really love the elements that they bring in. To me, this is one of the best like world building movies I've seen, I think in a really, really long time, where like you're not really questioning anything. And maybe it's because they're basically just taking a fantasy idea and putting it in a modern age. So it's not so much guessing, you don't have to suspend too much disbelief. But the way that they set it up is just really it's really good.
yeah,
I'm a big fan of the movie now. Like I said, I didn't like it at all, mainly because I thought Barley was super annoying because yeah, I did think that he was getting in Ian's way and he was too obsessed about doing it his way. So that irked me on some levels, but now I have grown to love the movie. I freaking sob at the end, like when
yeah,
Ian didn't get to meet his dad, but Barley, the older brother, got to spend some time with him and has a couple memories. And so Ian writes out a list of the things that he wants to do when he gets to spend time with his father. And he unfortunately doesn't get that moment because of certain things that happen. But as he's going down the list, he realizes he got to share all of those moments with his big brother. And his brother was basically like his father figure. And so he says something to that effect of like, I didn't get to have a dad, but I had you. And I just like weep. And I
yep,
think for me, it's like grieving two different things. Like, one, I didn't have that nurturing parental figure to begin with, but then I also didn't have a substitute for that. And I
hmm,
kind of had to be that for myself. So, in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm split into like part of me is Barley and part of me is Ian.
yeah,
And then this movie helps me just like merge the two together and yeah, it's good. It's good. I'm a big
yeah.
fan. I'm a big fan.
I love the way that they bring the fairy tale into the modern world because it's
Mm-hmm.
true, all fairy tales sort of take place a long time ago.
Yeah.
But what would happen if you introduced technology?
Yeah.
So fascinating. I also love that the unicorn Pegasuses are feral. I think that's hilarious.
Oh my God. I saw that and I was like, I know Heather's going to say something about it because
I am a feral Pegasus unicorn. Thank you very much. It's how I identify now that that's who.
a little
If
bit.
you're asking like what creature I
Yeah.
would be, it is that. Yeah.
I was thinking about that too. And I think I would be a pixie, like or are they
They're
sprites?
so angry.
They're so angry. They're so tiny and so angry. And I don't know. I just feel like I relate to that on some level. I don't think I'm an angry person. I think there's like rage locked deep within that will come
Let it
out
out.
given the moment. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that like throughout their journey as the brothers are introduced to all the different fairy tale characters, they remind them of their magic. And then, because like the fairies weren't flying before they met the
Yeah.
brothers, right? And then they started flying. And it's just like, I think it was just like kind of cool how their journey also helped impact. And like by the end, the centaur police officer is running away. And,
Yeah.
like, but I think you can guess my actual favorite part of this movie, which is the mom.
Oh, yeah.
Obsessed with their mom. I love her so
Yeah.
much. The movie starts with her doing this, and it's kind of like as a joke because you're like, oh yeah, this is what a suburban mom would be doing. She's doing a little workout video and she's going,
Yeah.
I am a mighty warrior, and she's doing her
Yeah.
little lunges from side to side. And I just love that like positive depiction of the mom exercising too at the very beginning. She's having a good time. She
Yeah.
looks like she's having so much fun. She's saying her little mantra. Also, it looks like I should turn this into a gymnasium workout 100%.
Absolutely. Yep. Because
But
it's not
then it
about like
comes,
her doing the workout to be slimmer or to like there's no comment on her body. It really is just like she does it because she's enjoying it and it makes her
yeah,
feel like a mighty warrior.
yeah. And then at the very end, it comes full circle and she goes to slay this cursed dragon. And she just like,
She's
she
doing
does her
all of the
little lunges
exercises. Yeah.
up the side of the dragon and I am a mighty warrior and like stabs it. I'm like, yes, this is like taking it full circle. We're literally going to kill a curse using what we learned in our little workout video. And I just think that's if that's not like emulating like I don't know. I just really it's my favorite. I love that part of this movie so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I wrote that quote down like let out your inner warrior. I am a mighty warrior, just like all of those things. And to your point about how as they go through the journey, they help people kind of tap into their authentic self, which I think is really cool. And by the end, like both things are existing. It's not that they get rid of technology completely, but it's that like magic and technology can now coexist. And
Mhm.
now you have access to both of the things. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention a little about Ian's like new me list and
Mm-hmm.
how, like this poor kid, there's so many instances in the movie where I'm like, you gave up on yourself before like those kids were like so his classmates were so willing to go to his party and he just sort
I
of like
know.
self-sabotaged his way out of it.
Yeah.
And I just like I think that like you can have aspirations to change, but you don't have to reinvent yourself, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And I do love that this adventure kind of like shocks the mom too when everyone's like, "Oh, it was actually Ian who was doing the thing. It was Ian who did this." And she's like, "What? Ian?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
My shy, awkward like what?"
Yeah.
And so I think it just like goes to show that like when you're really passionate about something, when you want something so badly, like the version of you that you aspire to be sometimes comes out.
Yes. Yeah. Like on the journey to maybe reinvent yourself, you actually find out who you were all along, you know?
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
just love how badass the women were in this movie. I know it is a story that follows two male characters, but the mom and the manticore are like,
I freaking love the Manticore.
yeah,
She's badass. She's so funny. Um,
yeah, two very badass women in very different ways, and also in larger bodies, which I loved. So,
yeah, there was definitely a range of body diversity. Oh, one of the quotes that I liked and that hit me because of the era of life that I'm in is you have to take risks in life to have adventure. But I also like that on the flip side, again, I think this movie just like does a really good job of holding the both and is that risks aren't always necessary. Like Ian was able to go on an adventure and still be kind of shy and awkward and mostly stay in his comfort zone. You know, he doesn't become like, I don't know, he doesn't become as like confident and boisterous. It's more that like he is still himself and he is accepted himself for who he is. And I also really like that Barley is a huge magic nerd, but he's not ever upset that Ian is the one that has the gift of magic.
He's always so incredibly supportive.
He is.
That made me cry a lot today. Like when Ian sort of has the realization of like, oh, Barley has been the one who's been here for me the whole time. He hears his brother sort of reinforcing like, my brother's got the magic gift or whatever. And like that just like I just started bawling immediately. I was like, yeah. Literally no jealousy, no like, and it just felt the utmost like support and excitement. And I just, wow, you don't get that a lot.
I think that's like what love is, right? Just like really unconditional love. And I'm sure there's a lot more we can say too on Barley and how he's perceived as a screw up, but he's just on a different path in life than is this, you know, societal norm. But that doesn't mean he's a screw up, because look at all of the things that he was able to do to help and to solve these problems and stuff. So oftentimes when I think when we are looking down on someone else, it's more of an opportunity to check in and see why it makes us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know? Yep.
100%.
I was just going to say too that this movie has so much heart. Like in the same way Elemental has a lot of heart, this movie does too. And I wonder if it's because both movies are deeply impacted by the director's personal experiences. Like we talked about in the Elemental episode, there is a big theme or big part of the movie is about like immigration and culture clashes and things like that. And when I was looking this movie up for a synopsis, again, thank you Wikipedia, I found out that the director is also the director of Monsters University, and I guess he was encouraged to develop more personal stories. So the concept of Onward was actually inspired by the death of his father, who died in a car accident when he and his older brother were young children. So I guess like he has kind of put himself in the shoes of Ian, and he began to write the story after hearing an audio clip of his father, in the same way that like Ian replays that tape and talks to his dad and stuff. Like damn, you know, the heart
it
of
makes
this
it
movie
feel more real.
Yeah, like gosh, it's so good.
Yeah, little LB rated this one a 4.9. Again, we got a 4.9.
I'll take it. It's, you know, it's good.
Not quite a 5, but not a 4.5, you know?
I'll have to go back through our notes and see what he has rated a 5. There have been some. There have been a few.
I think it was Incredibles. I remember Incredibles being one of them.
Yeah.
But that's all that I remember.
Makes sense.
But yeah, that's our other self-reflective animation. Thanks for sticking around this long. This is a long episode.
It's a much longer episode than some of our others this season. And then we have our end of the season roundtable coming out after this, where we just kind of unpack the whole season, including some of these. So stick around for that one too. Thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Mental Health Multiverse podcast and for spending time with us, HB and LB. Special shout out to our musical composer, Little HB.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, feel free to share it with others, post about it on social media, leave a rating and review, or become an exclusive Patreon member to see bonus and additional content.
To stay up to date on all things MHM, you can follow us on Instagram at Heather Bodie and at littlebit_notbroken, or subscribe to our YouTube channel to see our faces and watch some fun bloopers. You can find all of these links in the show notes.
Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Yay!
Yay.